Number one, the Earth in space demonstrates a recent history. Planet Earth travels 66,000 miles per hour as it orbits the sun. That specific speed perfectly offsets the sun's gravitational pull and keeps Earth's orbit the proper distance from the sun. David Bassett wrote that, and later he'll be given credit for this. Earth's magnetic field is affected by the sun's rays, and any significant disruption of the Earth-Sun magnetic balance would bear consequences. So, evidence for extraordinarily rapid changes in the geomagnetic field during a reversal in the recent measurable past, has now been published in the mainline secular literature. We're not getting this information from a Sunday school quarterly, even though you get a lot of good information from a Sunday school quarterly or a Sabbath school quarterly. A lot of good information there, but this is coming from mainline secular documentation. The work of the late Dr. Thomas Barnes, the mentor to David Bassett, indicates that the total energy in the Earth's magnetic field is decreasing with a half-life of 1,465 years, plus or minus 165 years. Paleomagnetic data from sedimentary rocks demonstrate the field to have historically decayed at least as fast as it does now. So we have a handle on what's going on, at least that fast in the past. The field at that rate would be considerably less than 20,000 years old and date the Earth and its relationship to the sun within that time frame. Now, that statement is much more important than it appears to be on the surface. For if you go back considerably less than 20,000 years, if you go back just 10,000 years before present, the magnetic field decreasing at its current rate, and paleomagnetic signatures indicate clearly that it's been decreasing at least that fast, probably faster in the past. If you go back just 10,000 years ago, that field would have been so powerful that living systems could not have held together due to its extreme intensity, called technically its moment. If you go back 20,000 years ago, it would have had the strength of a magnetic star, and many of the atoms necessary for living systems could not have held together. Do you understand what I just said? It cannot be 20,000 years old. It can't be 10,000 years old. I mean, what we see and can calculate scientifically. So, if we're going to try to find the answer as to how all of this came to be, we're going to have to realize it's recent. Now, rock strata, thousands of feet thick, are sometimes bent and folded into hairpin shapes, like this. In the evolutionary scenario, hundreds of millions of years are assumed to have transpired during the depositing of these folded layers. Wait a minute. Houston, we got a problem. According to evolutionary theory, each inch of sedimentary rock took 500,000 years to form. That's what you Google it, and that's what you'll find from the technical secular literature. What's the basis for that? Well, that's the rate at which, if crustaceans with a lot of calcium in their shells, snails and pelecypods and clams, die over time and dissolve, and it filters back in and more die, it would take 500,000 years for an inch to form. Well, it would if that's the way it happened. And for 2 inches, you got 1,000,000 years. Well, it would if that's the way it happened. But that's not the way it happened. Well, how do you know? Because you search far enough worldwide, you will find interlacing all of the sedimentary layers, all the eras, the epochs, from Paleolithic time all the way to present, you will find polystrate fossils interlacing them. Fossils that run through sometime up to 8 to 10 million years of supposed evolutionary time. Now wait a minute, how on earth could that tree remain in place? 8 million years or 5 million years or 1 million years or 15 years? It can't. Dr. Henry Morris III recently was interviewed. He's the president of ICR, and David Bassett is a graduate, and Kristen will be a graduate very soon of ICR, Institute for Creation Research. She's the botanist for the biosphere. Dr. Henry Morris III recently was interviewed by the secular press, and the journalist said, "But Dr. Morris, doesn't the earth look old?" He said, "No, it looks flooded." And he's profoundly right. You look at it, and it looks flooded, sedimentary rock, and that's how you get this sedimentary rock. Well, here's the point of this whole thing. How do you bend those without breaking them? Those sharp hairpin angles remain intact. They had to be bent while the rock sediment was still pliable, was young in a flood. Well, prove to me that there was a worldwide flood. Okay, are you awake? I'm glad you came today. This is a good crowd, by the way. Prove to me there was a worldwide flood. You're standing on it. 18 feet, you're sitting on it. 18 feet below where you're sitting is sedimentary limestone, Cretaceous limestone. This layer was first technically described in the literature near Austin, Texas. It runs from Austin through Glen Rose, through Fort Worth, Dallas, up to Amarillo, runs 1,600 miles to the eastern seaboard. This layer, and it is sedimentary. We excavated polystrate fossils in it, running through layer after layer. It was laid down by sedimentary deposit. How do you get sedimentary deposit? You got to have mud in moving water to get sedimentary deposit. Just that simple. Well, it runs 1,600 miles to the eastern seaboard, picks up at the White Cliffs of Dover, runs throughout Europe, Scandinavia, runs throughout Russia, runs throughout China. This layer runs through Saudi Arabia. This layer runs through Israel. David Bassett, were you and Billy Caldwell, our two geologists, in 2004 examining that Cretaceous layer in Israel? With Don Patton, that's right. Three credentialed geologists. And the Israelis and geologists worldwide have examined. Runs through Israel, runs through Africa, back to Texas. Everything sooner or later comes back to Texas. Yeah. You know, all the great cities are in Texas. Athens, Palestine, Paris. Do you know there's a Paradise, Texas? Breckenridge, that's right. Dallas, Fort Worth, Glen Rose. All the great cities, the important cities, are in Texas. Okay. But our Athens is a little compared to the other. But it's cleaner than the other. I've been to the other. Okay, back to the idea. So there's sedimentary rock. Back to Texas. It runs south throughout Mexico, Central America. This layer runs throughout Buenos Aires, Rio de Janeiro. Wow. This same layer. Back to Texas. It runs north throughout Canada. Back to Texas. It runs west. It's broken up in the Rockies, but it picks up again. Runs through Los Angeles, San Francisco. That's nothing. It goes all the way. It's broken up, but it picks up again in Australia. The very same sedimentary layer with the very same identifying fossils. Wow. It is a worldwide sedimentary deposit. How did you say we get a sedimentary deposit? You got to have mud and moving water. There was a worldwide flood. Okay, so these rock layers show that the earth is young and the sedimentary rock. Here are more. How do you get that with 500,000 years of sediment building up? And for a full inch, 2 inches, it's 1,000,000 years. Yet the folding occurred without cracking, with radii so small that the entire formation had to be still wet and unsolidified when the bending occurred. This implies that the folding occurred less than thousands of years after its deposition, much, much less. Earth history in space and its global flood catastrophe are young. That's the first point we're making here.